moms and dads, especially when they're in the early stages, you're doing so much to pour out for everybody else in your family. And in different ways, but both moms and dads struggle with that. Like, we're just running on empty so often, right? And we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not nurturing ourselves. And when you neglect your health and your own well-being long enough, you will run on empty. And I always say that if you're empty spiritually, there's nothing to pour out on your family.
We have an extra special guest today, AmberLia Dirks.
AmberLia, welcome to the podcast. All things
If you're
possible.
watching on YouTube, AmberLia is cruising in the podcast room with us.
She steals the show.
She totally steals the show. She's rocking her Every Life diapers, looking cute
clambering
as ever.
around, being extra sweet.
How could something so sweet trigger us, though?
Trigger? Do you get triggered by AmberLia?
Sometimes. Like yesterday when she was screaming for like 30 minutes off and on in the car ride and kind of like, just like, you know,
Hey, you.
or when she...
This guy, however, Mr. Micah, this boy, he's so sweet and loving. But we all kind of get triggered sometimes as parents, as siblings. So that's the topic today we're going to be covering with Amber. She's author of a book called Triggers.
Parenting
Triggers. And it's just so important to intentionally think through these things so that we can show up and we show up to be a parent, show up to be a good husband, a good wife. And
I think, like, you know, we already had this conversation, so we're filming the intro after. And I think some of the things that really stood out to me is, like, you're not going to arrive at your pinnacle in parenting. Like, there's going to be challenges along the way. There's going to be new triggers along the way. So being able to work through those continually, to slow down, pause, pray.
Have a strategy set
Strategies.
up, right?
You're going to get a lot out of this conversation. So whether you're a parent or you want to be a parent someday, we hope this conversation encourages, inspires, and be sure to share it with your parenting friends, and then hold each other accountable, give each other ideas, because Amber mentioned at one point in our conversation that there's no formula. Like, you're going to have to work through this and come up with different clever ideas per each child, per each trigger, so that you can better serve your family. And so I think this is something to do in community and be encouraged, whether it's with your husband or your best mom friend, someone who you can kind of like bounce off each other, so that you can work through your triggers and not let them take root and kind of destroy certain moments in the parenting journey.
Yeah. Enjoy. Welcome to All Things Possible. And I'm glad you're here. Welcome to All Things Possible. We're so glad everyone is here. And today we are super excited to have Amber with us. I had been introduced to this idea of like triggers and being triggered first by seeing it in my own life and Bethany's life. And as Bethany usually does, she's really on it with like researching new ideas and topics and just becoming more knowledgeable. And that's how we found your book. That's how we got introduced to you, Amber. And we're so happy to have you on the call with us today. And hun.
Yeah, welcome, Amber. I think this is just such a pain point in so many parents' lives, and yet we may never really work through it. You know, it might be this lifelong battle, but you can definitely get better at working through your triggers, I think. Like, I feel like compared to, 4 years ago, I'm way better off than I am today, even though I was just remembering, like, last night I got pretty triggered.
Well, there's factors.
There's
a
a lot going on for sure.
Amber, tell us about yourself. Tell us about welcome.
I see the cover of your book behind you on the side. So if anyone's watching on YouTube, you can see our backgrounds and whatnot.
I mean, that was risky. That was risky move, picking that cover of like the angry mom with her mouth like yelling, right? Because nobody wants to be that person.
So noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me on, because I think that for a long time, I was like, I know I didn't want anybody to know that I struggled with anger or that I was triggered, right? Like, that's embarrassing. Like, who wants to raise their hand and go, hi, I'm an angry mom. And so the Lord really did a work in me to help me get over that and to be like, look, I've transformed you. I'm still working in you. Why don't we do this together and sort of destigmatize it so that other people who are struggling can have help? Because I thought I was the only one for a really long time that was triggered like this. And so I've come to find out that's not true. There's a lot of us. So if you're listening and you struggle with being angry or frustrated or yelling at your kids ever or any of that, you're in the right place for this podcast right now or on YouTube, because we're going to unpack it a little bit, I hope, and it'll encourage you that, there's hope for change, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this stemmed from like your own journey. And did you like see it in your own mom, like growing up, or was it something that just kind of spurred on when you started having children and just noticing?
It's such a great question, Adam, because I think there's two camps of people, right? There's the parents that came from an angry home, and you're like, I swear I'm never going to do that when I'm a parent, right? And then there's the people who grew up in a fairly peace-filled home, and then they have their own kids, and then they're finding that they're not so peaceful, and so you're caught off guard. And I think a lot of us are caught off guard by our triggers. But I did have a fairly tumultuous upbringing, and I was that person that was like, this is not going to be me. And then I actually had kids, and I was especially caught off guard about it because I had been a teacher professionally for like 10 years. And I thought, and I was a nanny in college, and I thought, I got this. I'm going to be a great mom. And I loved my first son so much. I have 4 boys, so it's a testosterone home, which is crazy and amazing all at the same time. But when my first son was born, he never slept at night. And I was just to the bone weary, exhausted. And he had colic and he had reflux, and he didn't sleep through the night till he was like 3. And so that alone was like, I was fragile emotionally, right? Yeah. And so here I was, this capable teacher who never really raised her voice in her class. And now I'm not like yelling at my baby, but I just feel totally helpless, and I do feel triggered, and I feel very frustrated, and I don't know what to do. And so that was sort of the start of my journey of being a triggered mom. And I just thought, man, I thought it was going to be better than this. This doesn't feel like life to the full, like God promised me. So what are we going to do here? Yeah, it was rough.
No, we can totally relate to that, where, we had seen people around us, like my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, having children, and there's having sweet moments with their baby, and you look forward to that. And then we had our own first child, and same thing, not sleeping through the night. We're waking up just exhausted, and just our systems are frazzled, and we're not able to spend time with each other or even have the energy to do things that we usually had energy for. But also, how do we think clearly when you're raising your child? And something, like you've talked about, like dropping stuff on the floor, and you're just like, oh my, it just triggers you, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I think this is such a tough area, because I think, like you mentioned earlier, all of a sudden you're snapping at your kids, your children, and you never pictured yourself being that sort of a parent, but all of a sudden something's kind of flipped inside of you or something, and you're like kind of what's the word? Like you're upheavaled or something.
Yeah.
It's super humbling and then shameful. Yeah, you don't want to
Yeah,
tell anyone. You're embarrassed, but you're also like, I don't, like, this is wrong. Like, I don't want to treat my child like this. But then you're like, you're stinking annoying sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah. And I remember when my husband left for work one day, and he was gone, and I was, I worked from home most of the time at that time when my two littlest guys were toddlers, and then I'd had a third son, so I had 3 kids under the age of 4 at that time. And I just looked around the house even and just saw the mess. And so, triggers are kind of anything that will set you off. It could be the sleepless night, but it could just be the messy house around you because there's just not enough time to keep up with everything, especially when they're very young or when they're older, as teenagers. You're like, man, I've done so much for you. And then they get very, sullen or moody, or they're just talking to you like disrespectful. And you're like, your mama did not raise you that way. Like, what is going on here, right? And so there's just like the whole mix of things that can trigger you and set you off. And I realized, like, I just felt like the Lord say to me, you're here with these kids. They are a blessing. They are a gift to you. But you have to stop blaming the triggers and the circumstances and trying to fix everything. This is positionally where I have you in order to make you into a Christ-like person, to be on fire for me. I'm going to have to refine you. And he used my children to do that and those circumstances. And I just kept in this vicious cycle for way too long until when I sent my husband off that one day, just something clicked. I was snapping all over the place. I had a neighbor come knock on the door. I was afraid that they'd overheard me. And I was just like, this is a mess. I can't keep doing this. And so I just determined, I was like, I'm going to look in the Bible. What does God say about anger? And how does he parent me as a loving father? Like, what does that look like? And then I need to do that. And so I just sat myself down when the kids would nap, which was kind of like a rare, special time for me to like chill for a minute. Instead, I got back into the habit of reading my Bible again and just looking at what does the Bible say about anger. And I was really convicted. There was one verse. There were so many verses, but one of my key verses at that time was Proverbs 29:11, and it says, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back." And I began to learn that, to be angry sometimes is a righteous anger, right? Like, we should be angry when there's sin in the world. There are things that are offensive to us as Christ followers. But I was misdirecting my anger toward my children instead of the enemy, who is the source of all of that. And so that's where I had to learn, Amber, you're being foolish as a mom. You didn't grow up and say, hey, when you're a mom, why don't you act like a fool, be really angry. I was like, this is not working for me. So I had to take that verse to heart and just say, I can quietly hold this back. I can take a minute to pause instead of immediately just letting loose all my emotions and all my anger and all my frustration and saying all the things that I swore I'd never say. And so God just began to slow me down, literally just slow me down, and to bring peace into my heart and mind, and to think, Amber, do you want to be foolish in this moment, or do you need to quietly hold this back and reevaluate a better response? And that was really my turning point.
How many children do you have at that point?
So there were 3 at that time.
But they were all under 4, so that's like
they were all under 4.
All under 4.
And you're like being run ragged hard.
And there are boys who are pretty chill. They didn't live at my house. My boys were like the all boy, climb on the outside of the McDonald's play place, right, structure, where all the parents are like, your child's climbing up over that. And I'm like, yeah, I know, he's fine. Yeah. But what are you going to do? The testosterone just built, fed off of the next child and the next and the next. And they were just very, very active. It is a miracle that we haven't had we had our first broken bone this last year. So that's amazing, because my oldest is 18. I made it 17 years without a broken bone. So
wow,
we're doing good.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I've been thinking about that too. It's amazing we haven't been to the ER very much as well. Yeah. Just knock on wood somewhere.
Yes,
we have mastered the super gluing.
We do travel with Dermabond, and that's been a lifesaver.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyways, but
true story.
Yeah, that's man, I think about like myself. Have you found like different triggers? Do people have different reactions to their triggers? For myself, I find myself when I feel overwhelmed or triggered by something, my default is kind of more withdraw and kind of check out rather than lash out. I think we're kind of opposite on that.
Well,
on
we're
that
the
side.
opposite. Mine's like, it's very like known. It's apparent. Like, we're all cleaning the house right now or else.
Yeah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to go
It's
check
true.
out. And yeah.
Sometimes anger, it really simmers under the surface, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's like that pot that's just simmering. The lid is there. And then some people get to their breaking point and the lid blows and then it's like disaster, right? So you can kind of keep it. And so really for all of us, whether our anger is really visceral and apparent and reactionary right in the moment, or we're a slow burn towards that point, this whole process of looking at your triggers, and hopefully our desire is to grow in the Lord through any circumstance and situation that God has us in. I mean, you guys are living proof of that whatever your circumstances are, that God can use it for good, right? It's your podcast, All Things Are Possible. And so for me, it was like, okay, I don't want to just fix the situation with my kids, make sure that they're perfect so I don't have to be triggered. That is really not like the stance of our book and the things that we talk about on this topic, because really this is about becoming more like Christ, and that this is also about growing in our faith and maturing. So our kids are immature. That's why they often trigger us. So we have to have an appreciation and an empathy for their immaturity developmentally. Yeah. But in the middle of that, God is also interested in maturing me. He's interested in maturing you through this process of allowing your kids to mature. It's mutual. Ephesians 4:26 and 27 was another really key verse for me in this, because it talks about how, we can be angry and not sin. But then the Lord goes on to say, don't let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. And I was just like, okay, so my anger it's an opportunity. These triggers are an opportunity. It's either going to be an opportunity for me to grow, or it's going to be an opportunity to my enemy in my home. And that's the last thing I want. Like, I don't want to give him any help. We know the world is hard enough as it is to navigate. And so for me to be opening up that door to the enemy in my home, when I have said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, then I have to deal with this anger in a way that is going to be Christ honoring. And so I really just prayed, like, Lord, have your way with me. Like, I need you to help me. And he just slowly but surely began to give me ideas, which he promises to give us wisdom when we ask for it. So sometimes we get stuck in this cycle and we're like, I don't know what to do. Well, the Lord will speak to your heart. He will give you ideas. But Wendy, my co-author, and I of our triggers book, we say that we like to take a holy pause. Like, one of the first things that the Lord just reminded me is like, okay, if you're going to quietly hold things back, that means you just need to take like a little holy pause and take a breath and focus on what is holy and right and good in this moment, and how can you have a right response instead of an angry one, instead of one that's going to actually do more harm than good. And so I will just be honest with my kids sometimes, even in the middle of a moment and a triggered moment, and I'll just say, look, I'm getting frustrated and I don't want to be, so I'm just going to take a pause and pray about this and take a breath, and then we can talk about this in a minute. And so learning to just stop ourselves in the minute and say, I just need a minute, and allowing all that physiological stuff to calm before we speak, because I want to get myself under control before I try to control my child. And so that is, for me, is key, is that I don't want to give any opportunity to the enemy. The Lord is going to give me an opportunity to grow and to be patient and to be calm and to be a peacemaker in this moment.
Yeah, that kind of gets me thinking, though. It's like when we pull back the picture, you mentioned control, and in my mind, you can't really control your children, and even the idea of, like, controlling them might not be, like, the right terminology as to, like, we're raising them up in the way that they should go. We're encouraging them. We're leading them in the way that they should go. And I feel like that in itself is, like, a reason why we're triggered is because we want them to act good. We want them to do what is right. We want them. And then to the point that we're willing to try to control them to do what we want. And then when they don't, that's when the, like, trigger kicks in, because we're like,
that high
why are you acting
expectation.
like that? Like, why are you biting your brother? Why are you pulling each other's hair? Like, why are you, doing all these barbaric things? Like, we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they're kind of cute together, and they get along pretty good, but they're pretty barbaric, and they do a lot of, like, barbaric things throughout the day. Like, just this morning, they're, like, playing tug-of-war over toys, and, like, my 4-year-old's been biting a lot, and I'm like, he's actually, like, such a sweetheart, and he's so fun, but he's kind of like, when he's angry, his trigger is, like, he goes and bites. He already has his little triggers.
Alea, well, I wonder if he learned it from. No, he already has been biting.
Yeah,
It's
a common thing.
Yeah, the biting phase.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
but I guess bringing that back around, like, maybe the idea of, like, trying to control our children is the problem in the first place. Like,
that's right.
We're supposed to lead and guide, protect, and show them the way, and stop them when they're harming themselves or others. But like, I think for me, if I'm trying to unpack, like, some of my worst moments as a mom, I think control was, like, one of the biggest issues. And then the next biggest issue was to have unrealistic expectations on my children. So thinking that my 4-year-old's not ever going to bite anyone because we're a nice family and we have a nice household and we're of faith and we have God on our side, but, like, the truth is, like, he does bite and he does hit and, like, he's not perfect.
There's also a mindset. I was thinking about our mindset nowadays in general is to avoid conflict, everything in life should be, easy. That's what people are really searching for, is, like, where can we find this, like, easy path for us to walk down? And when things get hard, like, people want to avoid the hard stuff. People want to avoid when things get hard and we're encountered with a really difficult situation. It's hard to react to it in a correct way, I feel like. But that's where, where you brought up, Amber, that the Lord works in us through these times of difficulties, when we face obstacles and we face kind of that darker side of ourselves that we're encountering. But this is where the Lord is, like, pointing to us. I mean, this is where I want to grow you and shape you. And this is where the rubber hits the road, so to say. And where are we going to choose? Are we going to default kind of back to that easier path and falling back into that temptation or falling back into that anger? Or are we going to come to the Lord, take that pause and ask for him to, what are you revealing to me in this situation, and how can I grow in my faith in you and grow, so that I can serve my family? And, I think there's a lot there, and we have to be honest with ourselves.
Right.
We have to really be willing to lean into that hardship or lean into that hard stuff.
We threw a lot at you. I don't know. There wasn't really a question, but
that's okay.
What do you have in response? I love that, hun, though, like, truly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I think one of the beautiful things about this discussion is you're right. This isn't about controlling our kids, but that's what we're always wanting to do. And because there's these expectations of our children, we get really unnerved because we do a lot for our kids, and we're thinking it's supposed to look like this. If I do A and I do B, then I should see C. And when that doesn't happen, it's really disconcerting, and we feel very helpless. I think and sometimes we feel afraid too. We're like, okay, well, if we are this nice family and my child is biting all the time, like, what does that say about me as a parent? So there's just a lot of layers there, right? That we start to then feel like someone's judging us, and that's a whole other thing. And I always tell people, like, don't make decisions or parent out of fear or because of your peers. Like, we want to make our decisions in a rational, self-controlled space, right? Where we're not doing it because we're afraid something's going to happen or not going to happen, or because we're worried about what somebody else thinks. whether it's extended family or friends or the public, right? So just allowing ourselves to be like, look, my job today is to simply, and triggers in the first chapter, I talk about like being mom or dad as coach, right? So we're not really trying to control them, but it's more this idea that we're looking at our child, we notice their strengths, we notice their weaknesses. You know, when a great coach doesn't have an athlete or a musician show up and on day one, they're at the like peak competition, right? Like you evaluate and then you set them up to do things that are going to highlight their strengths, and then you assist them to help them overcome their weaknesses, right? And to grow and to be all that they're supposed to be. And I like that picture because it's a very compassionate, I think, an empathetic approach to parenting, in that we look at our kids and we're like, okay, they're struggling with sibling rivalry, or they're struggling with talking back. Or like one of our big ones was we're late everywhere we go. That was another big trigger. I could not get all my people together and with shoes on. Like I could get them together, but half of them are not wearing shoes, or one shoe looks, you know, like it's on the wrong foot.
And then someone has to go number 2 right before you're trying to like actually like put the car in drive.
Exactly. Wait, I've got to go to the bathroom, right? It's like, okay. So when you look at all of those circumstances, it's really easy to be overwhelmed. But I just look at each of those things and I think, you know what, the Lord, again, he's going to give us practical help and wisdom. This is not about controlling my kids. This is about looking at what's working and what's not, and then coming at it with empathy and grace. And, you know, like when we were running late all the time, I was like, okay, let's evaluate this. First of all, I need to be patient, and I probably need to be a little bit more of a better steward of my time. So that was my part that I had to examine, that the Lord was like, hey, Amber, these are some areas for you to work on, right? And then the other thing was no one could find their shoes. So I got a basket, and I was like, when we come in and out of the house, like, this is where the shoes go, because the littles were always, you know, throwing them off, and then we couldn't find them. So, you know, God will give you practical ideas as well as give us this loving conviction of what are the areas you need to grow in this trigger. Don't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Like, look at it practically. What can I do to, like, eliminate this issue? But do it because you want a peace-filled home and you want to grow spiritually yourself, not just because you're tired of dealing with the triggers.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't help but think, because, like, my sister-in-law and I talk about, you know, parenting and the lot of different ideas out there around parenting. And she was like, every time I talked to her, she was like, you know what, there's all these, like, parenting influencers out there that they only have 1 or 2 children, and they're out there professing this and that. And I'm like, but it's a whole nother level once you have, like, 3, 4, 5, 6. My sister and brother, they had 6, and we have 4. And it just changes when you have more and more children, too. I think, like, there's more chaos or more to manage and a lot of different emotions. And I love that you have 4 boys, because that's, like, full on and a lot going on there. But, yeah, I just, like, did you find that, like, throughout your parenting journey, it was just a kind of a continual journey? Like, you probably were never reached that pinnacle of success, maybe? No. Is that true?
Yeah. Oh, it's so true, Bethany. I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is my platform. I'm like, I am on this journey with y'all. Like, we're still in the middle of this mess. Like, you come over here, you're going to see it. And that's why I'm very transparent about my triggers, because I'm like, this is not about arriving. I say in my book, I say that it takes a childhood to raise a child. Like, that's at least 18 years, right? And, like, I like to think that my mom and dad still think of me as their child. And, you know, I'm going to be 50 this year. So, you know, we're going on a long-term relationship here for decades and decades. And so it takes a childhood. And as soon as you feel like you sort of have one stage figured out, it is going to shift and change. And they're going to be different. You know, I have 3 teenagers right now. And we had a miscarriage of twins in between my 3rd son and our 4th son. Yes, I look forward to meeting them someday in heaven. It will be sweet. But so there's like almost a 6-year gap between the 3rd son and then the youngest. So the youngest is like a whole other, it's almost like he's being parented by completely different parents at this point, right? Because my oldest just turned 18 And so he's an adult now, officially in that sense. And so it's always shifting and changing. And this is why it's like, Lord, just daily grace for today. I don't want to compare my kids. I don't want to compare Quade when he is 12 to how Oakley was when he was 12. I don't want to compare Ollie, at 17 to Quinn when he's 17, because they're very different personalities. They have a lot in common. They're all hardcore, athlete types and performers, but they're all very different in their stages and ages of development. And so it's really important that we don't allow that to be a trigger for us or them as parents, that we just take it one day at a time. Yeah. And also don't think of it as such a burden, like, oh, this is so hard, or this is going to be so difficult, or project that into the future. Like, what's it going to be like if I can barely keep them alive and not biting each other today? What's going to happen when they're 13? I can't even keep them from biting each other when they're 4, right?
Well,
but yeah.
I'm like, if anyone's listened to our podcast, I always talk about how, like, there's the barbaric season from, like, 5 and under. They're, like, little barbaric things. And
yes.
that, honestly, embracing that idea helped me so much, because I was like, wait, that's what we should expect. Like, they're
that's
a little barbaric. They can't control their emotions. They, like, randomly will hit when they don't get their way, or, like, scream. Like, yesterday I was driving home for 30 minutes. My daughter was so cute and sweet, like, most of the day, and then, like, the last 30 minutes, it was, like, off and on scream, like, tantruming, and it was, like, I got home, and I was, like, done by that time. But then, like, the day wasn't over. There was still more day to be had, and, like, the evening wasn't beautiful, and it was kind of a rough scene, but,
Yeah.
I mean, parents deserve a lot of awards, let me tell you. Parents deserve a lot of grace, because you're right, Bethany, it's hard. This is not easy. People don't tell you how challenging it can be, but it's also very sweet, because my oldest
totally is.
Yeah, and my oldest now, just to encourage you, like my 3 oldest, they're leaders in Fellowship of Christian Athletes, at their school.
Awesome.
They love the Lord. They are not perfect by any stretch of the mean mark, but they really do have their own personal relationship with the Lord, and they seek to be a light to others. And, when they do wrong, like one of my kids, he had a conflict at school with this other peer. And the other peer, definitely didn't do something very cool and never asked for an apology. But my son found him in the hallway a couple of days later and said, hey, I just want you to know that we're brothers, and I forgive you, and I'm going to put that incident behind me, and I just want you to know, like, I'm cool. Like, I don't hold this against you. God's given me a lot of forgiveness in my life, and I want to extend that to others. And this kid, was like, whatever, but I was just really proud that he's living it out. Like, what kind of a teenager goes and says that to another teenager that's really done them wrong, just of their own volition, without that person even apologizing, just offering forgiveness, right? So the seeds that you're planting now when they're 4 and when they're 5, they do bear fruit. We know biblically that seeds take time. We have to water them. Keep doing the good parenting in every season and in every stage. It will bear fruit, and it will be worth it.
I've spent my whole life in the ocean, and I've learned, just like wearing a seatbelt or a helmet, safety matters. That's why my family and I use Shark Bands.
Shark Bands uses patented magnetic technology to deter sharks by disrupting their electroreception. Kind of like a bright light in their eyes that says, nope, not today, shark face. No batteries, no charging, just simple, effective peace of mind.
Whether we're surfing, swimming, or just splashing around, Shark Bands is our go-to for ocean safety.
You want to geek out on how it works? Dive into episode 14 for a deeper look at the tech.
And check the show notes for the link to Shark Bands, because your peace of mind in the ocean is worth it. Stay safe, stay stoked, and keep loving the ocean. So when you did slip up and make mistakes along the way, how then did you face that?
It's such a good question, because I've been talking about triggers and anger in parenting now for like 10 years. And the overwhelming majority of parents that I talk with, myself included, we struggle with immense shame and guilt. And we're very hard on ourselves. And that is exactly what, the enemy wants. He wants us to be distracted by the guilt and the shame and the past so that we can't move forward. And I would just say, I had to give myself grace. I was very hard on myself. And that just made it worse because, it's one thing to be angry at your kids and then also angry at yourself, because now there's just magnified anger, right? It's like angry at them, angry at me. And so just embracing and accepting God's grace and his loving kindness. He tells us that his loving kindness draws us to repentance. God's loving kindness does. And so I was like, Lord, I want to receive that loving kindness for myself. I do want to repent. I want to turn around and do the next right thing. And then I also want to be able to offer that to my children. I want to be able to look at them with empathy. And it's actually kind of cool because as you look at your kids and they're struggling in their own sin issues or even immaturity, you go, okay, there's still some growth to be done there. That's all it is. It's a signal. Like this moment of sibling rivalry is just a signal to me that they have some more maturing to do, that I get to, as their parent, help them. I get to come alongside them and point them to the Lord. And so that's also how God is looking at me. You as the parent are God's child, and he's looking at you that way too. And he's just saying, okay, you're not there yet, Amber. You're not there yet, Bethany, or Adam. He's like, I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to forgive you, and I'm going to give you lots of grace. And let's keep going in the right direction day by day. It's just one day at a time, one trigger at a time.
Yeah.
That's super encouraging. I feel pretty, just something that, what's something that helps you on a journey? I'm sure you've heard a lot of stories of parents, reading your book and like beginning this journey. Do you have any tips for like, I'm a parent, I need to start implementing some of these tips, just like,
yes.
Could you like put sticky note? I would write on my hand. Oh,
yeah,
pray.
Or like some sort of like mantra or like
like
a prayer you say to kind of like bolster yourself into the battle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I always recommend is literally do take one trigger at a time. Like just take 5 minutes and say like, when I think about my frustrations as a parent right now, like what are the 2 or 3 things that pop up the most, right? Like what are those 2 or 3 triggers that are the most intense for me in my home? And then once you look at like one of those triggers, I just say, okay, I'm just going to take one. There may be multiple things that I'm struggling with right now or that my kids are struggling with, but I'm just going to take one thing at a time and really dedicate that to the Lord. And so if it's the sibling rivalry, or if it's talking back, right? Your kids are talking back to you. Or maybe it's even just yourself. You're like, whenever there's chaos, I keep saying words that wound, and I need to slow down. So whatever it is, take that one trigger, take that one issue, and really go to the Lord with it. Really, please, just pray. Like, the prayer is so powerful. Never underestimate the power of prayer. And that was key for me because, as I told you at the beginning, like I had this kind of long history and lineage in my past of angry parenting and dysfunction. And I just said, Lord, I don't want this to be me. And God is very faithful in that he told me, Amber, there is no generational curse that is a match for the God of all generations. And so I had to go to him in prayer and say, this trigger where I keep saying things I don't mean to say, that I don't want to say, that wound, I need your help, Lord. And I want to break that generationally in my family, and I want it to start with me. And so I prayed about it, and then I would find a verse or 2 that really spoke to that issue. Maybe it was, the teaching of kindness is on her tongue, right? Because I just needed to work on me at that season. Like, I need to stop, just knee-jerk reaction, blah, whatever. And so I would put that verse on my phone. I put it over the sink where I'm washing dishes, and I really allowed that Bible verse. And I would even memorize it with my kids, and I also let my kids in on what I'm doing.
Wait, because can you say that Bible verse again? We need to hear it again.
Yes, the teaching of kindness is on her tongue, and it's in Proverbs, and so this is where I was like, I want my tongue, and we also know that there's life and death in the tongue, right? There's so many verses, like just Google, or do a search in the Bible app on the tongue, right? Bible verses, and there'll be so many, and you could pick one that really applies to you. And so I would take that verse, I would write it, and on a sticky note, I would put it above the sink. I put it on my steering wheel, and then I would let my kids know. I would say, hey, you guys, I just have to apologize to you. I have been really quick to anger. I've been saying things just right off the cuff without thinking about it, and they're not always the right words. And so I apologize for that. I want to breathe life into you. I want to be a light to you. I want to be a peacemaker, because that's what God asks of me as your parent. And so I'm working on this, and I'm learning this verse. Would you like to learn it with me? And so if I'm being intentional to also have some accountability a little bit there, right? Like with my kids, I know they're my kids, but they were my accountability partners too a little bit. And so that just made it much more at the forefront of my mind. And then just let God have his way as long as it takes. If it takes 30 days, if it takes 2 months for God to have his way with you in that particular area. But he will. That's a prayer. That is a desire that God wants to answer. Of course he's going to do that work in your heart and in your home. And it's amazing. I have parents, and I saw this in my own parenting. When you start doing that, you take one thing at a time. You really ask God for wisdom. You focus on that verse, and you actively, conscientiously focus on it like it's your job. It is amazing what God does and how quickly things can turn around in the spirit of your home. Even your children will change, even though that's not the goal at this time. It's to work on yourself.
Well, they see, they have someone who's steady and balanced and who's leading well versus kind of chaotic, hot and cold, all over the place, a little destructive.
But I like the part about just being honest. This is where I'm at, but This is where I'm taking them along that journey with you and being open. I think that's pretty powerful to know that, we've talked about that with our children too. Like, hey, we struggle too. Like we're not perfect. We're not, and this is, this is a journey for us too. Like our faith is not like, I don't know, probably in my mind, growing up, you look up to your mom and dad as a child as like they've arrived. They are the, the perfect, but then you find out later on, oh yeah, they're just human like us too. And they're on their own journey, and so just to bring them in on that is pretty cool. I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think like our parents are probably more in that generation where we weren't brought along in that journey, as like they were more reserved, and especially my parents coming from more like a Mennonite Brethren, like small town, very conservative background. So it wasn't stuff like this wasn't talked about.
Right, for sure. It's more hush-hush, like keep it under wraps, so to say.
But I think there's a lot of power.
But your parents are so respectable.
No, they're amazing.
In so many ways.
For sure.
So definitely not like putting them down by any means.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of power in like bringing them along in the journey.
Yeah, totally.
And also that self-correction too. Like I let my kids see me like self-correct in the moment, because we're not going to always do it perfectly. And so when I start to see or hear myself escalate, I will stop and I will say, okay, I see what I'm doing here, and I'm just going to stop again, do that little holy pause. But I see my kids do that now on a regular basis.
Whoa,
they're
that's
learning.
Amazing.
It's amazing, you guys. Like when because I kind of, I modeled that for them, not perfectly, but I also let them know. Like I stop myself. I'm like, okay, I need a second. Let me rephrase. And now they'll start down the path, and then they will literally like just pause for a second. I'll see them kind of like take a breath, and then their tone of voice, they lower their tone of voice. They soften their language. And I know that's what they've done. I've started to see the plane take off, and it's about to crash and burn, and instead they steady the plane, right? And then they talk to me with respect. And that is such a beautiful thing. Like my husband Guy and I were like, it's not just about us wanting to have a more peaceful home right now. Like, I'm very aware that I am going to send these 4 men off into the world. They're going to perpetuate the things that we're practicing, right? If I want them to be adults who love each other and who love others and learn how to have self-control and how to stop in the middle of chaos and to become calm, they have to be kids who practice it if they're going to be adults who live it out. And so I want to practice that with them. We get to do that together, and that is such a beautiful thing. What a blessing that can come from our triggers, right?
That's literally what I needed to hear, because one of our older boys, he gets super triggered when we're doing laundry because our 2-year-old will come and disrupt all the work that we've done. And he's like, I see him like getting upheaval. So I'm like, okay, we need to lead by example, help him, but also maybe figure out a scene for the baby that's a little more practical. And then, but also, like, he probably needs to see this in practice more in a very, like, apparent way so that he can start practicing it. So, oh my gosh, that was gold. That was something I needed to hear, because I've been noticing some little child triggers going on, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to help him.
Right.
I'm a big believer in practicing outside of conflict. So this is kind of that coaching mentality, like, and you were speaking about, Adam, like, what's the practical thing? Like, if that's an issue, I will set the stage up and we'll practice that outside of conflict. I'll be like, hey, buddy, I noticed that when your sister or your brother comes along and the laundry gets thrown all over the place and it triggers you, it can be really frustrating, and I don't blame you. But let's come up with a better plan together. And so I'll be like, let's pretend. Let's go set this up and let's imagine. And I'm going to do my best to work with your sibling so that they're not doing that. But if it happens, what could we do instead of get angry and yell and hit them, right? Like, what could we do? And with my teenagers even, I'll be like, okay, well, how did that go? How did that work out for you when you had that response? And have them think about it instead of, like, launching into just a lecture outside of conflict, right? Either setting them up for success ahead of time with alternate options and practicing it. Like, this is very intentional parenting. This is not like permissive parenting, everything's just gentle and la, 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 la. This is like, we're going to be very intentional ahead of the game, and then even afterwards, like, to really dig into what's the root, what's really going on here, and what can we do differently next time. But to practice it when we're not in conflict, because in the middle of the moment, no one wants to listen to a lecture. Like, I, as a grown woman, when I'm upset, I'm not very teachable. And yet I'm expecting my child, who's like 3 or 13 and all the hormones and all the things, to be really receptive to my teaching and my correction in that moment. And so slowing down a little bit and being like, I love to do things outside of conflict. Like, if we can have self-control to not try to teach a lesson in the middle of the moment, then it's going to go a lot better for us and for our kids.
Yeah, so what do you think would be a good plan, though? So the laundry is about to get upheavaled. We just spent time folding it. So we're doing our practice run. So then what are we going to do during this practice run?
Well, I would actually ask your little. You'd be amazed at the great ideas littles have.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Like, I bring my kids into the problem solving as much as I can. As much as I can.
I love that. Rather than doing it for them, we're inviting them to help problem solve. That's so good.
You'd be amazed. Like, I always feel like they come up with much better ideas than I do. Like, there's so much wisdom in our little guys and girls. So, but yeah, I would say, okay, well, maybe they will. Well, first of all, like, if it happens and we've tried to protect it doesn't happen, like, we use our words, right? Like, it depends on the situation. Like, do they typically, like, throw everything around then because it got messy, so they may as well just destroy it even further? Do they hit their sibling? Do they do the biting? Like, what's going on there? But teaching them and knowing also developmentally, it's a really normal thing at that age because they don't know how to handle their emotion. So it's our privilege to guide them in that and be like, okay, I know when you're feeling like that, let's stand up and take big, deep breaths, or even, like, punch the towel for a minute and get it out instead of hitting your sibling, right? Like, that would be a better option. But just coming up with things that are that are, what are your family's missions and goals? Like in our family, we don't hurt each other physically, right? Like, so that's not going to be an option. So what do we do instead? In our family, this is what we do and say. We use our words and we try to make them kind, So it just depends on what is the goal, but really invite your kids into it and see what they have to say. And then maybe he'll even have an idea for what the other sibling can do that tends to just run at it and mess everything up. Like, what do you think we could do with them so that they don't do that? And it'd be interesting to see what they say.
Totally. I'll send you a little DM and let you know how it goes.
Let me know. Yes.
Well, this was awesome.
I actually have so much more to unpack here. Right? Well, we have some questions from online, but I also just wanted to ask you, how did you handle, especially the young years? I think moms struggle so hard when you're having a lot of sleepless nights. And then, health, did you have more of a holistic approach? Did you change anything else in your life, in your mothering years that helped you? Because, I feel like there is this, but if you're running off of cortisol and, really in a struggle state, is there any other tips that you have beyond kind of, slowing down, pausing, negotiating how we're going to work through the trigger?
We need a couple more hours to talk about that.
I know.
The short answer is yes. I feel like moms and dads, especially when they're in the early stages, you're doing so much to pour out for everybody else in your family. And in different ways, but both moms and dads struggle with that. We're just running on empty so often, right? And we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not nurturing ourselves. And when you neglect your health and your own well-being long enough, you will run on empty. And I always say that if you're empty spiritually, there's nothing to pour out on your family. So practically speaking, I really do protect my quiet time. I've been, reading through my Bible for years and years and years and years. But I will tell you, we got to be having, 64 ounces of water every day. I was having coffee in the morning and then coffee again later, not nourishing my body, living on coffee for the first morning hours because I'm just scrambling. And when I shifted that and I started to detox my body just by having enough water, it was a game changer. Protecting my sleep. I'm a big believer in that too. At least 7-8 hours of sleep. And I know that's hard when the baby is waking up or the toddler is having a nightmare. Or I had to learn to just be okay with and trusting my teenage sons to the Lord because I needed to go to bed at 9 o'clock. And they're not rolling in until midnight sometimes. And that's okay. That's the age and stage that they're at. And I had to be at peace with going to bed and knowing that they were just going to make it home okay. And to not worry about that and to trust the Lord with that. But trying to protect my sleep. So I actually, in those years, I was such a mess that, I gained a ton of weight. I got to the place where I was the most I'd ever weighed. And God just was lovingly convicting me. I didn't feel any condemnation at all. I just felt like the Lord saying, Amber, you're missing out on the blessings of obedience and stewarding your health. And so I just went on a radical shift and got super healthy. Lost 95 pounds actually during that season.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have you on again for another combo. And if y'all don't know, Amber also has a book on marriage triggers, so we might have to have a 3-part series here.
Let's go.
I mean, you guys are, they're going to be like, what is wrong with this woman? She has so many issues.
No,
not
even.
So we're in our 30s. You've lived longer than this. You have wisdom to share with us. You have wisdom to share with.
Thank you for saying I'm judging, Adam. I appreciate that.
I'm celebrating you, and
I
know that there's so much to learn.
Yeah, no, I'm just teasing. It's amazing. It is amazing. I do give God glory. I'm so thankful that he was patient with me. And if anything, these different stories of mine, of my experiences, will give you hope that God is able to do anything. Again, back to your podcast, all things are possible. I never believed I would be able to stop eating ice cream at night. That was my thing. I got it together a lot with my kids in that season. But I still had some issues because I was collapsing on the couch at night exhausted and having 3 scoops of ice cream. And then I had autoimmune disease, and then I was tired all the time. And, when you're not regulated emotionally because you have the cortisol and the dopamine loop, and then your leptin is decreased because your cravings are out of control and your system is all out of whack, then you're really struggling in a way you don't have to. If we can just get off of sugar or help, get a good night's sleep. And so those were things that I had to learn to invite the Lord into as well. From top to bottom, inside and out, the Lord had his way with me, and he still is every day. I'm just depending on him, you guys.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amen.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. Well, I think that's what we all need, is just to be dependent on God. He calls us to be like the little baby. Like, it's so humbling, but that's what our calling truly is. To sometimes you got to hit the bottom to be like, Lord, I need you. And well, I have some questions from social media because I wanted to invite our listeners or my followers to kind of chime in on this conversation. Okay, so we talked about calming ourselves, like, we slow down, you can say a prayer, take a breath, but let's see, sorry.
Get a pedicure, take a bubble bath, read a good book, do some things for yourself too. Those are all important.
How about like when your toddler is screaming and yelling and not listening, and like how can you stay calm in that moment? This is what Nicole asked about.
That's a good one.
Good question. Yeah, good question. I think that one of the most startling things as a parent, when you're a new parent especially, and you have a toddler and they're losing it, right? Like in the middle of the store or even just at home, you're just kind of like, I don't even know what to do. Like, they're flailing, they're going to hit me, their volume is so loud, there's the embarrassment factor if it's in a public place. And this is why I say, like, it's really easy to over-discipline when we're worried about what other people think. And so if it is in a public place, like I just really think it's important for us to remember, like, please do not overthink what other people are thinking about you and your child. A lot of people, especially if they're other parents, should have a lot of compassion for you because most of us have kids that have done that. It's not a reflection on you as a parent.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful to look at online. There's lots of resources that you can just be like, every once in a while, be like, what is the developmental norm for a 13-year-old? What is the developmental norm for age 2 or 4, right? And so when you know that and you realize this is normal behavior, it doesn't make you feel shame. But also, again, it's just them learning to express themselves. They don't know how to do that yet. They haven't learned how to tell you they're really, really frustrated or they're really, really upset.
Or really tired. They're probably just
tired,
their systems
or
are like
hungry, or needing some attention, some quality
empathy.
time.
Yeah.
Those are things that come up.
Giving empathy and really just go down to their level and just say, you know what, it's okay. I just be soothing. I would just use soothing words. I know you're very upset. Yeah. I know you're very upset about this. Yeah. Empathy. Move to empathy. Calm them, because again, they're not going to be open to a lecture or a lesson in that heightened state. No, it's normal. And then that's when the good parenting comes. Hey, remember yesterday when you had, a tantrum? You were very angry. I want you to learn to use your words. You can say things like this. Mommy, I'm really upset, right? Or I'm very tired, or whatever. We have to kind of teach them how to communicate in ways that are more mature, right? That's a process.
That's awesome. And sometimes, too, like I found with my 2-year-old, actually yesterday, she was kind of like flailing and losing it. I don't even know what set her off. I had to turn on some music, so I turned on a Choo Choo Train song, and then she honed in on that, and she was like,
so good.
I try not to go to TV. I'm really anti, like, turning on a show or TV. But the song did it great, or like, oh, let's go find a gecko or a flower. I actually tried to find a flower first. That didn't work. So then I turned the Choo Choo Train song on.
Good.
And then
Yeah.
she forgot about whatever
Yeah.
was happening. So
Some
I think with
distraction.
real
Lighten the
littles,
mood,
you kind of
right?
have to get creative.
Lighten the mood, right? When things are really intense, what can I do to just lighten the mood? Not everything has to be a discipline issue. Sometimes we just need to lighten the mood.
Okay, so let's try to get through 2 more questions before we wrap this up. This woman says, I take everything personal. My 9-year-old just knows how to push my buttons, from Jess. And I feel like that's probably really common. Like, it's hard not to take things personal when your child kind of does something mean or like, that's just not nice.
Yeah. That's such a great question. And I think parenting gives us the opportunity to, like, be offended all the time if we let it, because there's so many things our kids do that we can take personally. And, like, I remember the first time my kid told me, like, I don't love you and I wish I was in a different family. Like, really? How could you say that to me? So those things, I think, happen to all of us. But what was so healing for me is, first of all, there are a couple different scriptures. There's one in Ecclesiastes that says, don't take to heart everything your servant says about you. You yourself know how often, you have cursed others. Like, don't, it's a thing. Like, that we all say things we don't mean, right? I remember when I was young saying similar things to my mom, and I didn't mean it. And there was this piece of me inside that was really hoping that she didn't believe me when I said it. Because I said it, and I knew I didn't really mean it, and I regretted it. Don't we all say things we don't mean or that we regret? And it's just part of our human nature. And again, our kids are very young. And so they will often say, dumb things. They'll say hurtful things. And so just remembering, like, I'm not a victim. I'm a mom. I get to be the mature one here. And I say this phrase to my kids sometimes. I'll say, I don't think you really mean that. But I just want you to know that I love you no matter what. And even when you're not doing the right thing, I still love you. And I don't make it a big deal. Yeah.
Right. And, like, I think of, like, God's grace on our life. He calls us to, like, forgive 77 times 7. And I think the idea there is, like, just it's, life is going to be an endless forgiveness journey. And so being able to forgive our children, forgive ourselves, forgive our spouse, like, it's just life is full of ups and downs, and we got to be kind of prepared and ready for that. I think I've definitely taken stuff personal, and that's hard. So, but just knowing that, they don't always mean it, and to just keep fighting for that connection, to give them what they need, to
and you're right, Bethany, being forgiving. Yeah, giving the forgiveness over and over again is a really important part of it, for sure. Yeah.
This one woman just said, I've always heard that when you as a parent start to feel your emotions boil, to go walk. I like that. I think sometimes, like, we just need to go on, like, a quick walk. I just wanted to put that out there. It's not necessarily a question.
I agree. I'm all over that one. That's wisdom right there. Yes, for sure.
Okay, finally. So this one's good, and I see this a lot in the respectful, like, kind of peaceful parenting. I think there are different camps, but there's a lot of camps on social media, and it's almost can be confusing as a parent. And I don't really want to get into that because it's probably too much today. But this person saying, like, what's a mix between validating emotions or having, empathy versus, like, having boundaries and teaching and, stopping them if they're doing something super wrong.
It's a big question. Yeah. And, this is where I just have to say, like, I don't really believe in formulas, right? Like, there's never going to be a formula that's going to just be the magic thing that works, because we're all unique and different, and our kids are unique and different, and the ages and stages change and develop. And so I would just say that the main thing to consider and to remember is God is going to give you discernment and wisdom in that moment. I want to make sure that I'm prayerfully asking for that on a regular basis. And sometimes it's a simple prayer like, Lord, help. I love in the Bible, King Hezekiah, he says, Lord, I don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. And that's one of my parenting prayers. Lord, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you. And I know that you're going to help me have discernment to when do I need to give empathy and when do I need to give grace. I have one situation where I had a child who had a terrible outburst, and he was supposed to be going on a special play date with a friend and to have a treat and all the things. And I knew in that moment that to allow him to have a blessing when he was in that place at that moment was the wrong decision. And I had to let him know, you don't get to talk like that in our home and then continue on this path, and you will not be able to go today. And I love you, but we're going to try this again another time. Because he needed that discipline and that correction, that loving correction. There was another time, not too long after that, where a child blew it, and I took them out for frozen yogurt. And I was like, I want you to know that what you did was wrong. But this moment today, though I will often give you correction, loving correction and discipline, I want you to know that I'm giving you today what you don't deserve. And that is what grace is, that God is abundant. I'm an imperfect parent. God is a perfect parent. This is a picture of what salvation looks like, that he's giving you what you don't deserve. And I want you to simply experience the undeserved love. There's nothing you can do or not do to change God's love for you. And that goes for me too, but especially for God. Right. And so the Lord will give you discernment about when do I give empathy? When do I know they just need a break or a nap? When do they need that correction where we're like, we're not doing this, and here's what's going to happen next for consequences. And they have, they should be fitting and all that. So it is a fine line, I believe, sometimes, and it varies from child to child. I even tell my kids, we don't talk about what's fair amongst, you as siblings. I'm not going to do exactly for you what I do for your brother because you're very different. Yeah. And there will be different things that are going on.
Yeah. The maturity levels are different. Well, that I super appreciate that. And that makes me just kind of want to point out, too, I feel like this would go without saying, but, our children should never have to feel like they have to earn our love.
Right.
And so just always reminding them, affirming that, hey, I'm here. I love you no matter what you do. There's nothing you can do to change that. I just could see as a child if they're, getting so much correction all the time, they might.
It's discouraging.
I don't know. They definitely need some piece of balance and, just some always reminding them,
So
I love you, I'm here for you.
Yes.
And, well, any final words you'd like to share, Amber? I feel like we got a lot out of this. I'm super encouraged, and I just think, this is a challenge for so many of us. And, my husband kind of more, he tends to, want to disappear, and I'm more of, the upfront, it's a parent that I'm upset. And so I think either way, though, there's going to be some challenge and some missing needs if we're reacting or disappearing, whatever it may be. There's going to be some missing needs. So I think just remembering that we're there to fill their needs and lead, guide, protect, direct, encourage, cheer on, but also correct and re-guide or
Yeah, and I would just say don't grow weary in doing good, right? There is going to be a beautiful harvest for all the faithful parenting. This is not about being perfect as a parent or having perfect kids. It is about yielding to the perfecting work of the Lord, just day by day. Let him have his way with you. And yes, love covers a multitude of sins, right? Let love lead everything you do. If you allow love to be the leader in all that you do, you're going to have a beautiful family. You're going to have a wonderful home life. And then also just keep in mind that this is going to be a season of parenting that's going to go on for quite a long time, but embrace it with joy. Just know that this isn't going to be always about moving from one trigger or obstacle to the next. Really focus on the things that are going beautifully and the things that you love about your children, and really be committed to just reflecting that love from your own Heavenly Father toward your children. That's going to cover a lot of our triggers in and of itself. And just know that it's never too late. Some people are listening, they're like, what if it's too late for me? I've already done too much damage, or I'm already too far gone, or my kids must hate me by now, or whatever. And that's not true. Kids are so forgiving. They're so gracious. They're often much more forgiving than we realize. And God is able to do abundantly, exceedingly beyond all we could ask or imagine. It's never too late to do the next right thing.
Love it. Thank you, Amber. We're cheering all the work that you do on, and you as a mother and your home life, mother and wife. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. Y'all, check out some of our episodes on health, because we have dove into health so that you can better support yourself in this journey of triggering, and our other parenting podcasts. And Amber, we're definitely going to have you back on for your journey in health and also marriage triggers. So That's we great. Look forward to that in the future. Thank
Sounds
you
good.
so much.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Adam. It's been truly a joy just to have these conversations with you. God bless you both.
This episode went longer than we anticipated. We're both hungry and falling over now. So please leave us a review, give us 5 stars if you're loving our content. But more importantly, share this with your friends who need the encouragement. Aloha, and remember, all things are possible.
Chee-hoo.